And hello and welcome to Agile World. How are you doing, Karl?
I'm good, thank you. Recovering from an enjoyable weekend.
Yeah, what was it? How many bottles of Magnum champagne were you drinking?
Well, I have to be specific. It was 6 bottles of Magnum of Prosecco, not champagne.
Oh, sorry.
I'm not that flush.
And can I just note that Karl has still not taken me out for a drink yet. So I'm expecting multiple Magnum bottles of champagne, not Prosecco.
Well, I thought you were Italian. I thought you liked Prosecco.
I'm not gonna lie, I like a bit of both, but because you've done it for multiple people before, I want the good stuff. You've got to
Oh,
treat me
okay,
good.
okay.
Treat me
It's
well.
all being recorded. You know this. Yes, it's
No, that's why I put my demands in, so I've got viewers to
right.
prove
Okay.
it. If you
Right, I
don't,
do.
we'll
I
just
do actually have a nickname. It's Champagne Carly. So,
on the weekends. Well, we've got a
well,
wonderful guest with us. We've actually had this guest on before for Agile 20 Reflect, and we've got Yury with us. Hey, yeah, how are you doing?
Hi guys, that's fine. I'm doing very well. How about you?
Yeah, we're not too bad. It's nice to actually have you back on the show. Obviously, slightly different this time because before, obviously, you did. How many events did you do for Agile 20 Reflect? It was quite a few.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, it was 6 or 7 sessions. Yeah,
I do. I actually
yeah,
remember we
quite a
had some of
number.
our viewers actually asking you to repeat those events because it was around the agile metrics because they weren't able to attend your first event, which is not bad.
Yeah, but in the end, I just had no time to do that. Anyways, we got our recording available on the YouTube channel, so I guess that's okay. But maybe in the future could be a possibility. So
Oh
yeah.
no, that would be amazing.
Mhm.
So, well, thank you very much for coming back on the show, and we'd like to start things off with asking you about your agile journey. How did you get into agile?
Yeah, so it all started in 2016 when I was working as a functional manager in one large company specialized in business intelligence and data analytics solutions. So I was managing a technical support department. So, and we were able to identify some flaws to the current department's processes. So, and what we did, we decided to address these flaws with an application. So I must say it was an internal small initiative that I decided to take and to work on. And there it all started because I was thinking about that, like, how we do that, what would be the best way to deliver this project? What would be the methodology or framework, etc. So I started reading, I started to looking for some different frameworks that I thought could help me to do that. So I took a look at Prince 2, but Prince 2, the classical traditional methodology, it's more about all this stuff, the documents, documenting the process and so on. So it was not the case because when you have a small project, it's not that you don't need so many documents at your hands because you're just here, you have a small team, so why do you need it? So I thought that I'm going to discard this framework. So, and after some time I just came across Scrum Framework. So I took a look and I thought that, it's amazing. I thought it's just amazing because it's so simple. It just has a few ceremonies, a few events, and you are able to manage it and add some additional elements if you wish, if it's, you know, if it's going to help the overall process. So I was really excited about that. So we did. We started to implement Scrum. I'd say we implemented it partially. It wasn't, really pure Scrum from end to end because we had a really small team, but it was a distributed team. So we had one part in Brazil and another part in Argentina. So we did some interesting stuff like some extreme program elements included into our project. So we did some internal calls, some screen sharing sessions to write the code. It was fun. It was very nice and interesting. So yeah, I might say that these were my first steps applying Scrum and introducing myself to Agile methodologies. After that, yeah.
Oh, sorry,
Go
I was
ahead.
going to say, so you mentioned there, I just picked up on it,
Mhm.
you mentioned it, so you implemented like a certain percentage of Scrum. Which bits did you implement first that you found that did work to give you the passion to kind of implement more?
Well, we started with the daily meetings and some, let's say, pair programming sessions on daily basis that I thought was the best way to address all the development process. And after that, we had some, I'd say very lightweight reviews and retrospectives because, when you've got a small team and you've got all the members communicating daily, it's not that, at the moment, we didn't have, I'd say, any strong need to perform really strong reviews and strong retrospectives, because it was just an internal initiative. And apart from that, we've got our operational job to do. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And where did you go forward with it
Right.
then in the end?
Right. So when we delivered the project, so I decided to change the job and to start doing a full-time Scrum Master position, which I did. So, and one of the first customers I worked with was a large financial institution in Argentina. So in fact, I'm going to deliver a session at Agile 2021 this July, talking about this experience in more details, because it was quite intense experience. It was very interesting, right? So I was coaching multiple teams. So yeah, that was quite intense and quite exciting journey. Right. So, and after that, I had a small Scrum project. So I've got a small team in Argentina. So we were working for an international customer, delivering a financial analytics application. So it was a small team comparing to the previous experience. It was a bit less intense, but it had, its complexities in terms of that. We just started the project and then the pandemic struck. It was a bit complicated because initially we thought about being at the customer offices, working on site, communicating with the customer teams, and finally what we got, it's what we got. So we had to, to tailor our work within the context. So it was complicated, it was interesting, but in the end, so the project went very well. So we received really good feedback from the customers, and we were able to complete it as expected. And now currently I'm working with a few Kanban teams. So it's a different project, different customer, and we've got different teams. So in fact, they are in the middle of their Agile journey. So they started a while ago, converting some of their teams to Scrum and Kanban teams, because the idea is to have some Scrum teams managing the releases and stuff like that, and also put the operational teams on Agile rails. It's interesting because it's just I'd say for me it's not an unfamiliar experience, because initially I was working as a technical support engineer, technical support manager. So the workflow is quite familiar to me. But it's interesting how you can do implementing different agile elements to it. So, you know, in Kanban terms, it would be lead time and cycle time, and how would you use these metrics, and how would you show the team that this is actually good, and the Kanban board itself is actually good. But here comes the question: how would you prepare your environment to do that? That's interesting because they've got some internal platform developed by, if I'm not mistaken, by their internal development teams to process all the tickets. And now they have Azure Devops implemented. But there's no integration between this internal platform and Azure Devops. So the first question I got when I was doing my first meeting with the team was, well, like, it seems to be a double walk. And that's it. So yeah, it seemed to be like a double walk. But here there are two parts to address, right? So the first part would be, how would you do the integration between Azure DevOps and the internal application? And the second, how would you translate this, you know, that in fact, Kanban is good, that visualizing your daily job is good, instead of just glancing through the ticket queue. So yeah, so you know, well, I'm working on it. In fact, there is something that, you know, doesn't depend on me, like this integration. I can do the integration, so they have their developer, their teams dedicated to do that. So my job is just you know, just translate the agile values to the teams, basically.
So can I ask you about it? Because I actually saw Azure DevOps last week for the first time. With one of my clients' internal teams, and you know, they said, "Oh yes, we use this for our PI planning." And I'm going, "Oh, that's interesting. How do you get product owners from other areas not part of the work you're doing involved? Because they won't be using Azure DevOps. So how do you do your PI planning properly? Have you come across that one yet?"
So they do. So they gather the teams together on a remote call, and they just show the board. What's the process?
So PI planning is not about your teams. It's
Right.
about the people who are getting services from your teams, and the cross-cutting of other areas in the organization that need to provide services to you, and that you provide services to. So PI planning is about understanding the complexity for the next quarter of all of the activities that need to be done in order to deliver your outcomes. Now, if you as a developer are using Azure DevOps, great, you understand what you're doing. But how do you understand what a product owner on a different part of the world is doing? There's actually the person seeking the outcomes when they don't use the tool that you use.
Yeah, that's quite complicated. So in this case, I guess that you should establish some transparency between the product owner team and your development teams, because otherwise there's no way to show them that, like, you know, okay, so this is the board we use, then this is the board the product owner team is using. So, and
well, it's usually the same one.
you know,
so
you can visualize.
So that with PI planning, all of the epics and stories that are used by development are also used by product owners. But if they're encapsulated in Azure, in their DevOps tool, how do they get access? Because it's not an easy thing to just learn, because it's part of a straight-through processing of how you build Azure. So do you see where I'm coming at here?
It looks really different. I mean, I'm currently using, with a client I'm working with, Azure DevOps, and I haven't used that for years. And there's been some changes, but when you're used to using Jira is a really good tool when it comes to product and project planning in an agile way. It makes it so simplistic, so easy to read. Really, you know, you're able to organize it really well. But then with Azure DevOps, I think the one thing I'm noticing is, when you're used to having that simplicity in Jira, and being able to visualize and also do the roadmaps and then calculate your velocity and everything like that in Jira, the Azure DevOps tool seems completely alien, but it is a really good tool when it comes for development. But when it comes to actually planning, and you're used to Jira, it is very alien. I can tell you that it's very alien on that side.
Yeah, could be the case because, right, in Jira you got all your release management in place, so it's all simple and yeah, easy to understand. And Azure Devops, well, that's interesting because this is my
Even
first
when
time I'm using
splitting
it.
it up, yeah,
Mhm.
even when splitting it up, because in Jira you can split up into multiple sprints as an example, and then you can kind of pre-place your story into visually it's a better visualization tool, and you can kind of split up your sprints. So then you can kind of pre-plan and it can all link up to a roadmap. But in
That's
Azure
right.
DevOps, there's no simplistic way where it visually is simplistic, where you can just look at it, where you can split up your sprints. It's all in wording along columns, I find. I mean, I haven't used it for years. I mean, I've only been using it for the past 3 weeks, so I'm still learning on it. But yeah, that's how I kind of see it. But obviously, how long have you been using it? Are you finding the same problems?
In fact, I've been using it for I'd say for 2 months more or less. So, and the first thing that crosses my mind is that could be some plugin that you could just enable, I don't know, to be able to do your release management activities. But I think some investigation is needed on this to
So I
come
think
to a conclusion. Yeah.
so. I think from my perspective, looking at it in an end-to-end system for scaling agile, it's not fit for purpose for scaling agile. It's a stubbed system. It only serves the developers in that one area and doesn't communicate cross-functionally within an organization or top and bottom within an organization. It's great for building and for managing the build and deploying the builds, but actually, how do we get the feedback loop from the customers? Because that's why we do stuff, is so that we get a value delivered. How do we determine what the value is and that it has been delivered if there's no loop back around? And also, how do we ensure that the occasional pivots or adjustments that a product owner would bring from the business, this is not a technology product owner, but an actual person that will own the ops version of the software, how do we ensure that they have the ability to adjust the in-flight development? And afterwards, how do they manage the ops? Because I get the feeling the word DevOps is used in this as part of the name without understanding what DevOps is. I don't see
Yeah,
the
yeah.
I don't see the operations piece.
Right. You're right. That's interesting. That's quite interesting because without doing some investigation, just from the top of my head, I'd say try to find a different tool that you could do. Let's say in parallel with the with Azure Devops, say, and it should work somehow. But with just one tool in place, yeah, I guess some investigation is needed to see
Yeah.
if there's any best practices to do so, because yeah, it does a brilliant job for
Yeah.
a single team, for a Kanban team, or be
Yeah.
a Scrum team. Absolutely fantastic. But yeah, as you said, so how to scale Agile with Azure DevOps? That's a nice question. Nice question.
We
Yeah.
need we
And
need to
well
do a
responded.
discussion on this. We need a further discussion on this because the three of us haven't used it. I mean, I used it originally back in, I think it was 2016, 2017, and then obviously I've been more into Jira. And most clients I work with more Jira, and it's been presented back to me, and I've been open to the client. I said I got to learn how to reuse this tool.
I mean, it looks beautiful, but it's just the functionality that concerns me. And
I wouldn't even say it looks beautiful. I'd go against you on that one.
well, no, I think it's in comparison to on-site version of Jira as opposed to the Cloud Jira. Cloud Jira looks amazing, the
it is.
latest version, because I
I
downloaded
missed
it a couple of weeks ago. But in comparison to the on-site version of Jira, it looks really great. It's just I think it's really been built with a very specific purpose, and it does that very, very well. It's just that so one of the things that, the question I would ask was, how do I integrate it with Rally? to understand whether or not we're meeting our OKRs, because it doesn't maintain OKRs, but in large enterprises you'll have OKRs, and this is maybe beyond what you're needing to do, Yury. But it's just the interesting is, if it's going to be part of the delivery stack, it needs to integrate, and I'm not sure how it integrates at the moment. And maybe there's an API. Maybe there's an API that exposes the data.
The three of us should go away and come back in about 2 months' time and see if we can answer our own questions.
Yeah, sharing some results and findings.
Because I'm very much one of these coaches that when I go into a client, yes, okay, Jira is very popular. I've used Jira a lot, and I try not to implement new tools because it's extra cost, it's extra licensing and everything like that. And I even said this to this current client that I'm working with, and other clients I've worked with that have had it. And I've kind of I'm trying my best to kind of get it to work, but then I've got other people that I'm working with that are just going, just say Jira, just put Jira, just implement Jira. It's like, oh. So we brought up earlier, obviously you've done a lot of talks on agile metrics for the Agile Journey Reflect. Is there any details that you can give to our viewers that probably missed that? I mean, the importance to metrics and being able to run metrics on your teams.
Well, I guess this session was good, so I covered all the stuff that I wanted to cover. So, and after that, just you can go ahead, start applying this metrics. So, the most important part, I think, is to define and identify the correct metrics you could use to address your organization or team-specific needs. Because otherwise it's just, it's counterproductive when you just go and say, okay, we've got our evidence-based management metrics. Okay, let's implement them all. Well, I don't think it's a good approach to follow. So you need to understand your business context, your agile team's context. And after that, see, okay, what we've got. Maybe some of these metrics you got in place because, for example, customer satisfaction, most likely you have it. It would be really weird if you don't. So there you go. Okay, and after that, let's see what would be the most important points to improve. Because sometimes it's all about the innovation. Sometimes it's about technical skills. For example, if you're a new startup and you've got your junior developer teams because you don't have maybe enough amount of budget to hire some senior folks. So what would you do? Well, most likely you would invest into some trainings for junior developers. So would be the case. So in this case, there are some metrics about the innovation. So how you do your innovation process. So how you do with your, technical trainings and so on. So could be the case, just an example. Right. And after that, you just need to, tailor all these metrics to the context, because many people say, these metrics are useless because, we've got a lot of metrics and all of this is, some stuff that we don't know what to do with. Well, okay, in this case, you need to understand what would be your strategy. So first, elaborate your strategy. So, okay, you've got a set of metrics. What would you do with this set of metrics? So set your strategic goals. Try to do that. And evidence management talks us about the same. Like, okay, so you've got your strategic goals, maybe some, let's say, ideal goal to follow. And you've got your intermediate goals. So you just, step by step doing some experiments and measuring the outcomes and coming with a conclusions, you'd be able to progress. Otherwise, you won't be able to do so. So yeah, the idea is to, follow your gut feeling, if you will.
Are there any metrics that you've come across that a lot of companies that are using that are just the metrics that you just feel they don't work? They're not beneficial, but it's a common use that you'll find, the common metrics that's being used that you find often.
I'd say not the common metric, but the common pattern, because many companies, their management just wants to compare the velocity of the teams all the time. And they say, you know what? I come with a brilliant conclusion. We need to compare our team A and team B in terms of their velocity to find out who's better. Well, it's not about who's better. It's about the velocity. It's about how do they plan and how do they improve this planning. It's not about comparing the teams, but this is a common pattern. And I've heard from many senior managers that, we need to compare the velocity. So
I'm glad you actually
I
said
asked
that.
why.
I'm so glad, because I have a similar problem, because comparing teams' velocity, you can't do, because everyone's version of the Fibonacci scale is different. Everyone's
That's right.
knowledge and complexity version of knowledge and complexity is different. Every project, every product, every team is completely different. And actually comparing them doesn't actually give you anything. Turning around and saying this team here can actually complete per sprint cycle 120 story points, but then this team here individually can only complete 60 story points.
Can I just ask something there? So I think you just said everyone's version of the Fibonacci scale is different. I'm assuming you mean that every person's interpretation and values against it is different, because Fibonacci doesn't change.
No, you're 100% right.
I am the pedant in the room.
I will explain. Yes, thank you for confirming that. Karl knows me very well. So yeah, the Fibonacci scale doesn't change per people. So everyone's version of a 1 is different depending on their knowledge and complexity and what they agree. So that's why you do anchoring or calibration. I always get it wrong. Calibration sessions with them. So that's what you mean. Cheers, Karl. But yeah, it is. I'm glad you said that, because it's a common thing I find. It's a common thing I hear from a lot of Agile coaches, that the first thing leadership will want is to basically compare teams. And I've even met some in multiple different companies where they've actually used it in performance. They've actually used it within their performance reviews, which is the first thing I normally turn around and say, stop.
Right. The idea here is that I guess senior management tries to find some common grounds. We've got different development teams, but we'd like to, find some common pattern. So yeah, brilliant idea. So let's compare the velocity. And in fact, what's the problem and the complexity of the of any estimation technique you would get? So it's relative. That's it. It's relative. So everyone would do that differently. So there's no one common best way to do so. So yeah, that's why it's complicated. So, and I think that our task as an agile coaches or a scrum master, so it's just to work with the C-level executive, be it senior management, whatever, to explain them how does it work. So yeah, and maybe come with some presentations or training delivered on evidence-based management topic, because it's interesting and it should help. Yeah.
So I think it's interesting that people are focused on trajectory, because it's one dimension. It's like saying, let's flatten the world and just think in one way.
Wait a minute, isn't the world flat?
No, sorry. So you don't fall off the edge when you get to the end of it. When you sail past that big fish and the compass, you don't go off the edge.
I know.
But I think the thing is that there are, everything should be seen in context. There are more than one dimension. And I think that I don't stop people from looking at trajectory. I tell them to look at more than one dimension. I ask them to look. I look at retrospectives about what went well, what didn't go well. Because I want to understand the context of delivery, not purely the delivery. And then I want to look at purely the delivery. I want to know, was it good? Was the client happy? Did it fulfill the initial brief, and did it deliver what the customers need from it? And I think that those are the full set of dimensions. And you can't compare teams because you can't compare people.
That's right.
But it's a common desire in large corporation scale. Let's compare 50,000 people together, because there's some banks have got 50,000 developers, and they'll want to grade them in an easy way that's easy for the management. And actually, how quickly they do something is not a good guide for software development. Software development's not based upon speed; it's based on delivering the outcome. And if you were very quick to get the thing away from your, it's like some of those service departments where you get the feeling that they don't care whether or not they do the job or not, just as long as they close the ticket.
Yeah.
And that's not what you want from the software development that represents your company.
Right. So in this case, what you would do, continue talking about the evidence-based management, you could just use your release frequency metric with your customer satisfaction metric, and that would be enough to understand the context. How frequently we release? Is that okay? Customer satisfaction is good, bad? Let's try to do that. So this would help you to establish some initial context at least. And after that, you would craft your way to advance. That's it.
Yeah. I think, and actually also to tailor and to pivot, because I think that's the other thing, is that, again, people want to compare like for like, but there's no two people the same. There's no two teams the same. There's no teams work with different code bases, trying to achieve different parts of the delivery. And it's, trying to compare them is just like trying to compare dinosaurs with, cartoon characters. It's insane, but it's a human failing, and certainly quite prevalent in leadership in major organizations to want to do that. How do you
Yep.
coach leadership away from that notion that comparison is the right terms of reference here?
Well, I try to show them the overall process. So as I said, so you need to focus on the different aspects, not only the velocity, because, pursuing to establish the transparency between the management and the development teams, sometimes it results in this, that they just say, okay, so we're able to see, all your boards, some improvement backlog and so on, but we can see your velocity. And so the velocity, this is the first thing that they focus on. So, and you can just say, okay, but what about the other metrics, right? What about the other metrics you have? Because sometimes it could be, a certain sign when you have your release frequency too high. Because some customers, in some cases, would say, okay, but we're not happy with that because, our processes are complicated and complex in its nature, and we need a lot of time to get the upgrade, to migrate our older versions to the newer versions and so on. And they say, you know what, we just wanted to upgrade to version 10.1, and then you got your 10.5 in 2 weeks. Well, how should we go about that? And this is the sign that you need to, to downgrade your release frequency speed a bit, because otherwise it will be complicated for them to upgrade. But once you got your release frequency slower, they would be able to upgrade and they would be happier. So this would result in the higher customer satisfaction rate. And that's it. This is one of the, the simplest, I think, approaches you could try working with the senior management or C-level executives. So yeah, in terms of business, of doing business in the business context itself.
I like what you said at the very beginning, is actually understanding from your customer, what are they wanting this data for? What
That's
is
right.
it going to provide them? What is the benefits? Because I'm assuming being able to find that out from your customer also then allows you to work out which metrics are going to be benefited, and actually which are going to be beneficial, not just for leadership, but for everyone else as well.
Right. That's right.
you know what? I could
Yeah.
talk about metrics. Like I am very into it. You know me. I was a fan. I went to quite a few of your sessions. I've talked about it, but we're running out of time now. So thank you ever so much for joining us tonight. Hopefully we'll get you back on, because I'm sure there's so much more that we can talk about. But we appreciate your time, and thank you for telling us your Agile journey.
Thanks, guys, for having me. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.